Right, episode 2, we are going to just continue with the UI overview and wrap it up, and then actually get on to starting to play an actual game. There is a lot of information being shared, but I think it's important just to get an overview, and then when the game actually starts, you will then see how everything starts to fall into place as the game progresses. So, continuing with our Chief of Staff officers on the right, we have the medical officer here. This is the guy that keeps track of the local health situation with regards to the local population in Southwest Africa. During the course of the game, the villagers would request medical assistance from the SADF. You will see this when they raise a little Red Cross flag above the village, which indicates that they are requesting medical assistance. When they request medical assistance, the SADF can either recruit an ambulance unit and send that unit to the village and dispense medicine to the village, or they can actually build clinics, which are a way more efficient way of dispensing medicines to the villagers. Clinics operate within a particular radius, and any village in the radius of the clinic would automatically get the medical treatment from the clinic. Bear in mind, the clinic also needs to be restocked with medicine operations. So if we're looking at this report now, you'll see you can build up to 3 clinics. And currently you can see they're all not operational, but when they are operational, this will change, and then you'll also get a stock level per clinic at the same time. You will also see in this section of the report, you've got these 3 measurements, which measures the inflow and the outflow of the new medical cases or requests from villagers. So this will tell you how many have come in since the last turn that are new. These will tell you how many are active, and these will tell you how many are critical. So if you don't respond to a medical request, you will get a negative hearts and minds result in that village. If you do respond to the HM request in that village, you get a positive HM result, as well as getting a political points bonus, because it makes the folks back home in South Africa very happy when you treat them, when you provide medical treatment to the local population. You've also then got sanitation. This is another form, it forms another part of the humanitarian strategy. As the SANDF, you can build waterworks or water pumps or add sanitation to villages. This you do by using your engineer unit. He goes in and he constructs it. It costs you political points to construct it. Once you've constructed a waterworks in a village, every turn thereafter, just as long as that waterworks is actually maintained, it will produce an income of political points, as well as gradually pushing up the hearts and minds in that particular village. So it's a very important part of the humanitarian strategy. These waterworks are subject to maintenance issues. Sometimes they would break down, and then you'd have to send your engineer unit back in there to fix them. If you have a water tower in a village, and it breaks down, the hearts and minds of that village will start to decrease until you fix the waterworks. So it's important to keep it maintained. So these 3 will just tell you your coverage. So you've got 15 villages, and currently you've got no waterworks. It'll show you your coverage across the map. It'll tell you how many of them need maintenance, and it'll tell you how many of them are out of order. And this is when you need to jump into action. On the right-hand side, you have the disease thermometer, and this is really an overall indication of the health in the local population. So every time you don't respond to an active medical case, or your sanitation breaks down, this bar will start to rise. And if this bar reaches the top, it's going to then cause a disease outbreak. Now, if there's a disease outbreak, your whole population is going to suffer a hearts and minds penalty, and you're going to have quite a difficult time spiraling out of it by fixing the sanitation as well as the medical cases. So keep an eye on this thermometer. As long as it's below sort of 50-60%, you should be fine. So don't neglect this part of the game. You will get notices in the sitrep, and you will get a warning tab coming up here telling you when you are in danger of getting to a disease situation. So try and avoid that if at all possible. Right, so that's the medical officer, an important guy. He's really the main guy when it comes to the humanitarian strategy. Moving down, we come to the administration officer, and effectively all this is the guy that keeps track of your political points income and expenditure. So you can see the health and sanitation is quite an important line, and you'll get income, or your political points will increase due to your activities in the health and operations department. So if you've got water towers and you administer aid, you'll see this will be a nice revenue or a political points source. You've then got SADF operations, including UNITA. This is when you successfully defuse mines or prevent SWAPO insurgents from reaching your village, or any kind of contact that is in the benefit of the villager. You will then get a surge in political points. A good one is when you track down an arms cache inside Southwest Africa. You'll get quite a nice boost. So your military has to be active. If you've got a big military, make sure they're actually achieving something. Otherwise, you're going to pick up costs. Civilian bus revenue. There is a bus service that runs, and you'll get revenue for every successful bus trip. The buses run between the villages, and they will generate PP, political points for you, every time they complete a successful trip. But when they hit a landmine, you're going to have a negative. So it's going to be in your interest to keep the roads clear of mines, just so you can ensure you get a decent civilian revenue, bus revenue. We then come to the expenditures. We have the standing army costs. So every unit, except for conscripts and reservists, costs you a percentage of their cost every turn to keep in the field. This is to ensure that you don't have an army that's out of control in size, and you've got to keep within your budgetary measures, because the public back home in South Africa are not too keen just to spend more than 8-10% of the GDP on the military and the war in Namibia. So this is going to keep you honest, so to speak. So watch this number. In particular interest, helicopters are particularly expensive to keep in the field. So if you got them in the field, make sure you're using them. If you're not using units in the field, I would suggest you just repatriate them, and we'll show you how to do that once we're in the game. You then got all units recruitment and training. So any new units you bring in or any training you commence will cost you political points. Any new logistics stores like ammunition, rations, fuel that you bring into the game will also cost you. Infrastructure, things like roads, clinics, new bases, these will be your infrastructure costs. These are your medical and conscript penalties. These are penalties you will incur in political points if you leave injured SADF units in the field without attending to them rather quickly. The public back home in South Africa doesn't like it when they hear of the SANDF troops suffering to any large degree. You then also got cross-border operations, which is whenever you cross the border into Angola with SANDF troops, not special forces, actual conventional forces, you will start picking up political point penalties. And the longer you stay there and the more units you have in Angola, the worse the penalty will be. So what you need to do to keep the political situation stable and not get penalized is, if you're going to do a raid into Angola, get over there, do your work, and get back to Southwest Africa as quickly as you possibly can. Right, and then finally at the bottom here we have the personnel officer. So this is the guy that gives you an overview of the units' deployments across the sectors, as well as the battle groups and UNITA. So let's start with these three sectors here. These are the three bases, once again, sector 10, 20, 30. Each sector can have up to 8 units deployed into the sector. It's an important distinction not to confuse sectors with bases. Bases operate inside sectors, and they hold units in their bases. But in the sector as a whole, you are limited to 8 troops in each sector. Some bases hold 2 units, some bases hold 4 units, some bases hold 6 units, but they are not what this map is about. This map is telling you what units you have deployed across what sectors. These particular units under mobile have this particular red and gold tab above their badge. You'll see in game, whenever you see this tab over here, that is representing units that have the ability to cross sectors. So these are units that can cross sectors freely and cross into Angola on their own. So these units here that are on these sectors can only operate inside their own sectors. They cannot cross into Angola, and they can only operate within the geographical bounds of their sector. These guys are very important, and they include units like the parachute regiments, special forces, and the battle groups. Battle groups are effectively headquarter formations that you form up with conventional units to go across and do operations inside Angola. So a battle group is effectively a mobile base. It will move across into Angola, set up a base, and you'll operate from that base while the units are operating from the battle group. Each battle group can hold up to 4 units in the battle group. UNITA is an insurgency that operates only and exclusively inside Angola, cannot come into Southwest Africa, but is supported by the SADF, and you use these guys for various roles and functions in Angola. We'll cover them more when we when we start playing the actual game. But bear in mind, they are under the operational control of the SANDF, so it's an extension of your forces. You just need to manage them and use them. The Angolan army, FAPLA, is their arch rival, and those units generally try and destroy UNITA, and as the SANDF, you try and protect them. You'll see that as the game progresses. Whenever you are recruiting any new unit into the game, you need to ensure firstly that there is a vacant slot in the sector, because if the sector is full, you won't be able to recruit into that sector, and then you would have to repatriate some units to make a slot available. The second thing you need to check is to make sure that you have a slot in the HQ base of that sector, because when you deploy a new unit, it starts in the HQ sector base. So make sure you have a slot in the sectors as well as having a slot in the base to facilitate the recruitment of a new unit. Okay, some important UI functions on the mouse. You can scroll in and out with the mouse wheel. If you keep scrolling forward, you will end up in the tactical map. If you keep scrolling out, you'll end up at the strategic map. Another way to toggle between these two maps is to use this button over here, which is the toggle between the two maps. You also use the middle mouse button. If you push it down, you can then move the map around. And if you click anywhere on this map, it'll take you into that location on the tactical map. And once again, you move this map around by holding down the middle mouse button, and then you can scroll the map. If you use the Alt key, this will enable side scrolling on the map by just moving your mouse to the top and bottom of the borders. Alt, it toggles it on and toggles it off. So important to know. So the tactical map really is here to give you an overview of the whole, sort of the helicopter view of the battlefield. And as the game develops, you'll need sometimes to take yourself out of the tactical map to get an overview of the layout of your forces, and also where certain contacts and certain operations are needed on the map. The tactical map, on the other hand, is where you actually issue tactical commands to the units and move them around the battlefield. And then before I end this particular episode, we've just got these 4 little preference keys at the bottom. The one is you can turn the hex grid on and off, and you can do that for both maps if you so wish. You've then got the foliage button, which means you can actually take off the foliage and keep a cleaner map. Some people like to play in this particular mode, which is a bit cleaner. Some people like to play with a bit more atmosphere on the map. That's up to you. And then we've also got an animations toggle on and off. So all this does is, usually when you move vehicles around the map, there'll be an animation. If you choose to disable the animation, the vehicle won't do the animation, it'll simply just jump to the spot. Some people don't want to see the actual movement. That's a personal choice. So you've got, I'll come back to the lock button, but you've got a choice here of these slight preference buttons that you can mix and match, get a combination that suits the game style that you prefer. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this episode, and we will continue into episode number 3, where we'll actually get into starting to play an actual game, and then you'll see all of these components that we've just run through will fall into place and become second nature as and when you get into the swing of the game.